Hey students, I want to talk to you about painting with acrylic paint. So you're going to get small containers I made for you of acrylic paint. You want to try to keep those containers as pure as possible. If you are too enthusiastic and dip dirty brushes into the colors, you won't have a pure palette anymore. So what you want to do is set up with the paper plate. And I give you some little plastic knives. You can use any kind of knives. You just want to make sure, basically spoons and knives would be good for painting. You want to get a little bit of paint out and put it on the paper plate. You got a second palette for painting one, which is a watercolor palette, and it's got little spoon-shaped holes in the circle. You definitely want to save that palette for watercolor painting. Don't use it with the acrylic paint. The acrylic plastic will stick to that palette and basically ruin it for watercolor. And when you're using watercolor, you got a lot more water flow. You need those little pools where you're going to put your color in and mix your colors. So please just keep those two practices separate. Keep the watercolor palette separated for yourself and use the paper plates for the acrylic. So every time you paint with acrylic paint on that paper plate, at the very end of the painting session, you're just going to smooth out the plate. You may have noticed it in my classroom before. You just take the brush, and before you wash your brush, you just paint the leftover paint all over the plate, and you just, every time you paint, you put in another layer of acrylic, so you're kind of building like sediment, and the plate will get heavier and heavier. So you only need to use one plate for the whole year, and it just gets thicker and thicker. And the good thing is, as soon as you seal off that paper with the acrylic, then the paper plate will stop absorbing water and it'll just become like a plastic sheet. It'll be perfect. So just use that paper plate. You're going to use any tool to get a little bit of paint out onto the palette. Take as little as possible because you have to make that paint that you got last probably at least till January. So you want to do several projects with the paint. So you don't want to get all excited about painting, pour out all the paint, and then in the middle of November, when you actually have some assignments going, to be crying because you're out of paint. Let's see, I'm gonna make a list for you, but you got kind of a special palette. You got a basic mixing palette. And so your red is actually a magenta, because red and magenta are both primary colors, but magenta is more primary because you can make red out of it by adding just a few drops of yellow. So you got primary magenta, primary blue, primary yellow, which are the CMY of the printer's ink. So you got the very modern palette. And when you grab that magenta, you may have to warm it up with some yellow to make like a true, what we would call like a fire engine red. Okay, so when it's time to paint, you're gonna need a container to paint. This is a 32-ounce container, so like a large yogurt tub would be perfect. The paint will stain the container a little, so you should definitely find a container that you want to use all the time and just make it your painting tub. I have several of them. I like yogurt cartons. You want to have quite a bit of water when you paint, because you want to, as you paint, you're basically making weak paint in the water tub. So you want to have a lot of water there, and then when the paint water gets dirty, you want to change it. So it would be normal in a couple hours of painting to change your water a few times to make sure you keep having clean water to work with, so that you don't get muddy colors, unless what you want is muddy colors, because muddy colors are awesome. Okay, so you're going to need a container of water. You probably want a paper towel or some sort of painting towel that is disposable, because, and this is a very important idea, acrylic paint is made to stick to fabric. Okay, so what we paint on is canvas, and it is a cotton fabric. So you should assume that if you are painting, that the paint is going to stick to your clothes and your furniture and your canvas. So you want to set up properly to be able to anticipate the fact that the stuff you're using, which is color, in plastic, in liquid plastic, dries in like 10 minutes. And it's going to dry to anything it gets stuck on. It's going to stick to furniture. It's going to stick to your hair and clothes, your skin. So you want to make a nice clear space to paint, and you want to use something like newspaper or cardboard. I'm currently using the July calendar page. I'm using the July calendar page as a placemat to put a nice, you can use any big piece of paper. You want to definitely set up your painting space. I've been a painter a long time. I paint on half my clothes. I paint on all my quilts, towels, bedding. It gets paint. It gets everywhere. And I kind of do what the Mr. Rogers, when I'm going to paint, I put on a complete painting outfit. You can just pick out whatever outfit you were going to give to the Goodwill anyway, and then just designate that as your painting outfit, or maybe you already got paint on something already. I don't even go into the studio to do something else without putting on the painting clothes, because I usually bump into paint when I'm in there. So you want to be thinking about that, because if you get paint in your clothes or on your chair or whatever, you have a very short window to go get water and try to soften it all up. Okay, and soapy water like dish soap is the best thing for cleaning wet paint, because dish soap is made to get grease off of your dishes, and basically grease is oil and acrylic is oil, so the acrylic will break up and be able to rinse out. But you should just look at the nature of painting, that you put this colored plastic onto canvas, and you need to be aware that that could happen anywhere in your house, because that stuff is made to stick. Okay, so I want you to set up properly, maybe designate a painting shirt, designate a painting space, set up a space where your little kids in your family aren't going to be able to get in your stuff when you're working. Let's talk about the brushes. By the way, I've had little kids in my family get super excited about paint. Stick my paintbrush into my paint on my paintings, and me not notice it for a couple of weeks until it was completely dry, and I had to use sandpaper and a lot of love to get the little kids' additions out of the painting. You want to make sure that you're not tempting the little ones with those art supplies, because you have to remember how you would have felt when you were little, and you would have wanted to stick the brush in the paint. Okay, so let's talk about the brushes. So the brushes are a stick, hair, and a piece of metal, wrapping those two together. The piece of metal is called the ferrule. And so you want to always wet the brush. So using paint is a lot. I'm going to use the analogy of shampooing your hair. So if I'm going to shampoo my hair, I'm not going to just go with my dry hair and put shampoo, because the shampoo would just stick like in one place and I wouldn't be able to get it all over my hair. So what do I do to get that shampoo to spread all over this crazy amount of hair? I have to get the hair wet. And then I get the same amount of shampoo, and then because the hair is wet, I'm able to smooth and get all the foam everywhere in the hair. That's what you want to do when you are going to paint. You want to dip the brush in water, because that's going to let all of the hairs in the paintbrush work together. okay? And so you want to keep using water, and when, so water is our solvent. So paint is held together with a binder. The binder in this case is acrylic. You can also have a binder of oil paint is linseed oil. Tempera paint is an egg binder. Casein paint is a milk binder. The protein in milk will make paint. And, but we use a synthetic plastic paint, okay? And that's good. It's cheap. It dries fast. It's pretty non-toxic, okay? So we have the binder, and each one of the paints has some sort of solvent. For us, the solvent is water, which is great. It's non-toxic, it's free, pretty much. So you're gonna break down the paint to the right level of thinness. That's called the viscosity. So you're gonna change the viscosity by mixing water into it and make it the right consistency to paint with. So you're gonna dip the brush in water, then you're gonna load the brush. We use the same verb for loading a brush like loading a gun. So you load the brush with paint, and then you drag that hair across the surface you wanna paint on, and then you're painting. And you know how to do that since you were little. Let's just skip to the chase. There's a lot of things I'm gonna talk to you about painting, but let's get to what happens when it's time to clean up. So as you're painting, if you're using a lot of paintbrushes and you're using acrylic paint and it's summer, so it's hot, you need to keep your brushes in the water while you're painting and not leave them full of paint loaded. If you have a loaded brush and you go to the kitchen to get a snack, or you have to check something on the internet, you are very likely gonna let that brush dry up, and then you will have done something very special. You will have made a sculpture, because you're not gonna get the paint back out of that brush if you let it dry hard. Maybe if it's just sort of dry, you can get it back out. But once you let the acrylic dry in the bristles, and if you forget about them overnight, you forget about it, okay? It's over. So then you just have a stick with sharp paint on the end. Okay, so you want to keep those brushes wet while you're working and not let them dry up. Don't be lazy. You think, oh, I'm going to use that color in a minute, and then like 20 minutes go by and all of a sudden the brush is dried up and you have a hard coating on it. So you want to just keep sticking that brush in water, especially when it's hot weather, because they'll dry out really fast. And at the end, when you're done painting, you want to, first, I don't have brushes with me right now. You just swish, 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 get all the paint you can out into the water. And then you're gonna go to the sink and you are gonna wash the brushes just like you're shampooing. So you're going to put dish soap on the brush, and then I use my hand and I just rub the bristles against my hand and I work up lather. You can do it on the sink. You can do it on your hand. We're using pretty non-toxic paints. They're designed for students, so I wouldn't eat them, but I wouldn't be afraid to wash the brush on my hand either. With some really good paints that are made with true minerals like cobalt and cadmium, I wouldn't connect with the skin at all. But you're using what they call hues, so you're using synthetic versions of the really toxic colors. The toxic colors are beautiful, but we can't afford them. They're expensive and they're toxic. Okay, so don't eat the paint. Just assume everything with bright colors is dangerous for you. Even food coloring is not good for you. So like, you know, Skittles probably are not necessarily healthy for you just because they have bright colors on them. You should assume any kind of paint or makeup is not good for you, okay? So you're gonna just shampoo the brushes. You may rinse it out and think it looks clean, but like, here's your paintbrush when it's healthy. All the bristles come together and make a point or make like a flat edge, okay? But when you paint, it all gets filled with paint and they're all separate. And then when you swish the water out, there might be just a little bit of color down here in the bottom of the bristles. So see my little fingers peeking through? Okay. What we're doing when we shampoo the brush is we're trying to get these little bits of acrylic out all the way down at the bottom. If you don't do that, the bristles will dry like this and the brush will always be like a fan. Okay. And when you are painting like at school and you go over and you're picking out a brush, you're always avoiding the ones that are dried like this. So in your own brush, you want to shampoo that acrylic out, because if that acrylic is left, the brush is not going to come back together in a point. This is not such a fear with watercolor painting because the watercolor is water soluble and you can get those parts out later. But with acrylic, what'll happen is you'll let that all dry, your bristles will be all screwed up, and then you'll go try to use the brush on your watercolor and it'll look like this and it won't come back together as a point. So it's really important that you use soap to shampoo your brushes. That's all I can say. They're your brushes. I'm not going to come over to your house and yell at you. I'm not going to give you a grade on it. You're either going to make your brushes last or not, but I'm not going to give you more brushes because you didn't clean them properly. So that is your warning, is to take care of your own things. And one, I want you to paint and use them. And two, I want you to clean them properly. The brushes I got you should last all year. And you need to make sure that you're taking really good care of them. Later, if we get more brushes, they'll be for acrylic paint, and then these will become your watercolor brushes, and you will just keep using them on watercolor. But most people love the brushes I picked out for you. They're called Golden Taklon. Okay, that's it. That's the start.